a warrant for our arrest. And he says,
well, that ain't no problem.
and so his partner went back out to the car to call, and I said, it's Hauser. Why don't you guys come inside and I'll give you some iced tea.
So my brother invited the first policeman in while the other one went to get a warrant.
I was trying to be Christianly toward them, like Mac and Thomas.
And Richard, who was a musical person, played the piano for him.
I asked Richard to play some music on the piano while we were waiting. A Beethoven sonata.
Claire Doom, the Moonlight Sonata.
And so, he played classical music on that piano, and I thought, God, how can they ever play that if I lived to be 100? And it was beautiful music. I think deep down inside, the policeman saw that this was an awkward situation, you know. I mean, you probably didn't understand it any more than I did, but I think deep in your heart, you know, that's beautiful music. Nobody said a word. Nothing. Well, it wasn't long before they came with a warrant for our arrest. The policeman walked me over in the corner and he said,
Look, just give me the nigger and we'll just drop everything against you. We won't bother you.
I could see them beating the hell out of that poor young man, you know? Somewhere between here and the police station, teaching him a lesson. And I could not be a party to that. So I said, I'm sorry. I can't do that. So they took Richard, they took me, and put us in the police cars.
And they arrested me. And I remember them putting me into the police car. They arrested the boy as well. And they took me in a separate police car. We didn't even ride in the same car.
They took us down to the jail there in the square, and they searched my chapstick.
They even searched his chapstick. They took it apart like he was some kind of serious criminal.
And I guess I was frightened, but I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, you know. What was more frightening is when they took me into the cell and locked me up.
They took Richard in one direction, and they took me up the stairs to the top, and I found out later it was called the famed skylight for violent prisoners. It was really just a steel cell where the light was controlled on the outside. Well, they took me up there and opened the door and threw me in, and I said, "Where's the light?" He just laughed and said, "You don't get any lights." Closed the door, and it was total darkness. And I wasn't afraid. Being a mountain boy, I don't get afraid easily, but it was hot. Total darkness. And I could not see one crack to look out at the street light or anything else outside. It was so strange. Like a nightmare, you know? Twilight zone.
From the Macon Telegraph, June 23rd, 1954.
Clifford York, a white ministerial student taken into custody by the sheriff last night, who told him that he had violated the segregation law. He was released after a friend called an attorney.
From the Macon Telegraph, June 29th.
Bibb Sheriff James Woods said yesterday he believed his deputies acted lawfully in the arrest last week of a white ministerial student and a Negro college graduate at Westridge Circle residence.
An act legal within itself may become illegal if coupled with factors tending to produce a breach of the peace or to incite a riot or affray or to create a public nuisance. Good race relations have existed in this community for the last 10 or 15 years, and the Sheriff's Office will continue to use any legal means to prevent racial disturbances here.
Why don't you come out to our house for a cookout?
I think my father said something like, "Boy, don't you know you can't? You can't make it with those white boys. And I guess I never did anymore. I didn't do that again.
I never heard from Richard again. What really settled in is really fear. Every night we had cars hanging around the Westridge Circle, putting spotlights on us.
And they would spot our house and blow their horns.
And I slept with a knife, a butcher knife and a croquet mallet.
And they would call and threaten us and throw bricks and rocks and trash and all that stuff up in our front yard and yell, "Nigger lover!" That was tough. Because it was 24 hours a day kind of harassment from these people.
So for a long period of time, we were threatened in every way.
We went down to Jekyll Island for the weekend, and when we got back, Jan's roommate was out there instead, waiting for us.
Cliff, you don't live there at Westridge Circle any longer. The owner came down and threw everything you have out of the house and into the street.
So they kicked us out. And when I went to visit home in Clayton, Georgia, guess what everybody called me? The nigger lover is here, and I got all that from all my friends that I grew up with. My parents said, "You embarrassed us so much. You know, we can't walk down the street without people looking funny at us." And interestingly enough, I pulled into a service station, and one of the black persons who worked there, he came up to me and shook my hand. Now, do you want to know, can I tell you two things here? The two things that have really impacted my life, in terms of my future growth and what have you, this was one of them. But the other was this. It was like 3:30 in the afternoon, and I was walking across campus, and there was an ambulance. They were carrying a body out on a stretcher, and underneath it, the body was covered, but I could see very vividly, to this moment, it was a young man who had hanged himself by one of the pipes. And he was a gay person. And that is the second thing that has really, really impacted me. That this guy was so unhappy, and had so much trouble in adjusting, and so much stress and pressure. So I have been very involved in the gay issue. I've always been the troublemaker whenever anything that comes up that has to do with rights. Now, the 50s were really a mellow period. 54, 55, 56 at Mercer. I didn't see them as turbulent. The seed was planted with a lot of people.
We thought we could change the world overnight. But if you don't think you can change the world overnight, you better get out.
We were trying to escape change through our lives. We were willing to put our lives on the line.
Mac turned my life upside down and inside out. See, I was in the Second World War, and I didn't see the unpaved streets of Blacktown. I didn't see those streets. I didn't see black people. I didn't see them until Mac showed me what they looked like. But his eyes had been closed at one point, too. He doesn't tell you much about that, but his eyes have been open, too. He grew up in North Carolina, and one could hazard the guess that he was like I was at one point. And I think that's why he was so interested that others' eyes be open, too. That they see what he didn't see when he was grown up.
I was a farm boy in the Depression. We were living, you know, from hand to mouth. My father had just been in the 8th grade. All his life never talked to me one time about what we're talking about now. We only talked about nature and farming, things like that. So we're working in the fields. We're working in potatoes. We sell sweet potatoes. And we'd have to pick them up after they're plowed up. And they'd lie in the sun a little while, and they'd have these long strings attached to the potato with the vine. Long strings. As soon as they lie in the sun, they get like leather. So here's a black boy living in a chicken house on our place. Living literally in a chicken house, working for, you know, $5 a week. We're the same age, you know. He's 15, I'm 15, that sort of thing. We talk about having cars, we talk about girlfriends, we talk about going to college, we talk about traveling, we talk about clothes, and that's all we do. From morning to night. That's the way that we live. He eats in the kitchen at another kitchen from the same, my mother's cooking than I do, that sort of thing. But he never eats with us, never lives in our house, never touches our water, you know. He's completely segregated in every form and fashion. And I know very well he'll never go to school again, see? Well, I'm planning, of course, his whole career. But while we're doing this, we get in fights, you know. Lots of fun. Wrestling, you know. Kill time, and in the process, we grab these leathery vines, like whips, leather whips, and start beating each other, see? 14, 15 years old, and all in fun, and then all of a sudden, hit each other with little biting whips, and anger players, and both of us. And he's bigger and stronger, can beat the hell out of me. And all of a sudden, he's raising like this, his whip that's going to come down on me, and I'm down, and I can see it now. I'm looking in his eyes, and he's full of hate and to kill. And he's coming at me just with all his power, and just as he does that, he stops. And that moment, I will never forget. And you tell me why he stopped. Tell me why he stopped. He would have been killed. If I had cried or protested to anybody in that field, he would have been the one punished. He knew it, and I knew it. And it dawned on me at that moment. The fight is unequal, and it's unfair. It dawned on me at that moment that everything was gone. All our innocence was gone. Never again could we play. He realized it, and I realized it. It was gone. And it changed my life.
Clifford York.
Nancy Attaway.
Ida Michaels.
Mimi Thurman.
Jack McClendon.
Sister Holloway.
Jan Pugh.
Bill Andrews.
Carolyn Martin.
Ben Wheat.
Zach Lipstein.
Carol Smith.
Paris Mobley.
Young prophets.
We wanted to change the world.
In 30 days or less.
For me, Mercer was like a small flame
A tiny flickering flame.
that vanished into a consuming fire.
Combustible.
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 Burn.
Go to the restrooms, they're through the curtain there, or if you'd like to go outside and take a break to get some air, we'll be starting